Seems like, oh, it says it's live streaming, but let's see. All right, we're live. We made it. Took a little bit longer. We're just on the edges of Mercury retrograde. Welcome back, Kirti. This is Goddess Vibrations, a spiritual sexual empowerment show. Kirti's back on the regular, and tonight we're going to talk about calling in your king. And this topic was Kirti's idea. However, it's a theme we've talked about probably since we've met. It's been an ongoing theme. And so we wanted to share some stories and just talk about different energies and things that might be going on as you're out there dating and relating and mating and all of the different levels. So where do we start? Where do we start from here?
Well, I'd say, the first question that usually comes to my mind when different folks come in wanting to call in their king, their optimal mate, their ultimate match to their feminine. And a lot of times they'll think of that as, put themselves in the position of queen, where they are wanting to be in a certain role and they want somebody to step in at a certain role. And so whenever we use the term king, it's pretty clear that you know the role that you are calling in to support your strengths and also the places where you feel like you could call in for some reinforcement and some enhancements. So for me, I have something like your partner always should always be making you hype. It should be always heightening your personal evolution. It's always making you want to reach, whether your personal evolution is to be, better in bed and be heightened levels of sexuality and orgasm. If that's your personal evolution, that like you have a sincere desire to explore certain things sexually, that your partner is on your team for that and is committed for that. If you're on personal evolution in terms of communication and like building up strong communication and being able to be more clear and direct and concise or more sensual with your communication, well, your partner is there to heighten your personal evolution in that and is going to be like your biggest hype person, like your biggest fan club in terms of getting you what your personal evolution really requires and desires. And so that's a really beautiful idea. However, we need to be really clear on what our personal evolution is and our purpose. For some of us, we think we want partners because we are lonely and we want to have sex. For some of us, we want partners because we'd like to raise a child and we don't know reality without a co-parent. For some of us, we want partners because we want companions for the rest of our life. Some of us want business partners. I mean, partnership has so many different definitions. I mean, and again, we can't forget that we define what we desire a lot of times in partnership based on those original family agreements and partnerships that we made as children. So when we go to call in our king, and we're really speaking to, those who are deeply in the embodied feminine energy, so much to the point that you are attracting your equal and opposite masculine energetic force. Getting clear with knowing how you want your king to appear is super, super critical and important because we are such powerful beings.
Yeah, say more about that. Are you talking about like qualities or things that you've thought through that you want, that way it's kind of like a perfect match, or what are you talking about? Say more
Yeah,
about that.
that's a good clarifying question. So yeah, it's definitely qualities, right? So there's a couple of different needs that we have as beings on this planet, right? We have the foundational framework needs of our existence. These things that are, structural. They are, protection. Food, shelter, clothing, right? We've got those needs. Then we also have needs to be able to share our emotionality and our gifts, and for those to be received and also given like more energy and momentum to allow us to be able to sit in the space of creating our gifts, to sit in our femininity and really be able to cultivate and allow harvest to come through, right? Allow those ideas. So then there's those needs. There's also the needs for us, in terms of when we are in, our state of distress, like maybe when we have kind of like pushed over so deep in trauma that either we're in the shutdown mode, right, or we're in our complete reactionary spaces, which we all have as human animals. So we also have the need for someone to be able to like be strong enough spiritually for all of our emotional moods and all of our phases of being. And that goes right for both parties, but definitely we're just speaking to us individually. That's a need. And then we also have a need of unconditional love,
Mm-hmm.
where, in those spaces where we're sharing our gifts, where we're totally traversing the emotional forest,
Mm-hmm.
we need unconditional love to be accepted exactly as the way we are, and the state that we are in, and not to be forced, or we cannot feel like we have to change, but it is an inspiration to change, to evolve towards something, right? And then we have the need to speak and be heard.
Mm-hmm.
So that is also one of our human needs, is to be able to express and really to be able to change our mind and change our point of view and have partnership that allows for that change to occur.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, then we can really allow. We have a need for allowance, where we can just completely allow people to come and go into our lives and into our partners' lives, to evolve them essentially to be the best version of themselves, because when they're the best version of themselves, then we are inspired to be the best version of ourselves, and we have the space to do the same. And then finally, the ultimate need, I feel like, is the need to heal.
Mm-hmm.
And that is when you're just walking that path of allowance, and your partner isn't triggering you left and right where you feel like you need to get yours, but you're actually realizing that life is really working for you, and you've attracted this partnership ultimately to heighten your personal evolution.
Well, and that being said, so you're attracting these partners, um, theoretically, that match your vibration or match where you're at, and also then match your personal evolution and where you're going. Also, the unconscious stuff that's coming out that you don't know yet, that needs to be triggered and brought to the surface. And so, how does a woman know when she's ready to do that work with a king? Let's
Yeah.
say we're talking about a king. And also, are there more than one kings for that woman?
Yeah. Yeah, I think those are good questions. Well, one way to know that you're really ready to do this work in partnership
Mhm.
is if you are finding that all of the relationships around you are up leveling.
Mm,
Like for me, that's a really big sign. So when I know that I'm doing my work,
mhm,
because I naturally notice that my family relationships and my friendships
mhm,
are doing the work that I am doing. So we are digging deeper. We are going one level underneath. I'm able to have real honest conversations with business partners, or with friendships,
mhm,
with other women, or with men that I'm friends with, and I'm able to be honest, and I'm being heard, and I'm seeing that those friendships are naturally evolving towards my personal evolution. And then really it's not about you looking like, okay, like I'm ready, okay, king radar on today. It's almost like basically you learn how to be your own king so well that you're naturally manifesting king-like relationships all around you,
mhm,
where
mhm,
then you notice like, ooh, here's a person that has kingly qualities as a friend, and
mhm,
I'm attracted to them. It's
mhm,
like, oh, that's just like a benefit, like, and they fit my attraction scheme, like
mhm,
they fit all the things I'm attracted to as well, like
mhm,
great. But now you've, instead of looking at, we in this country, in Western culture, unfortunately, we've kind of, and I don't know, we can talk, that's all, we always say that's a whole nother episode
mhm,
about where we get these, false belief systems, and kind of these counterfeit personalities of what's going to allow us to be the most successful, these like, template ways of really kind of made it seem that if we are a certain way, we will get certain things. But what we're finding more and more of is that when we actually show up for ourselves, then we attract friendships that also show up for us in who we truly are. And then before you know it, you're like in a circle of a whole bunch of people who get you, and you're really just allowed to choose, and you get to have really close friendships with everybody. But you'll be very clear then when you're like, ooh, and here's an attraction. So what I was going to say, in Western culture, a lot of times we do window shopping. We're really trained to window shop. In fact, sometimes online, it's like you're guessing, aren't you? You're like, okay, well, shoot, look at the model, how the model looks in this outfit. Let me look at some of these measurements. And you're like, and I kind of like, I know how my belly and booty work together, and I know how my breast and my back fat, I know their relationship, like they've got a relationship, and my booty and belly have a relationship. And then when I put them in clothes, like we create this whole dynamic when we walk down the street. But really that's window shopping, right? Like we haven't gotten to get into a fitting room where we can like try on the clothing and see like, oh, well, if I tailored it here, or like how much work would I want to do to shift this outfit to really make me look how I know I feel and how I want to feel in this outfit. You get what I'm saying? And so a lot of times, imagine if we did that with our homes. Like we just see, on realtor.com or something, we just see a picture of the outside of the house and we're like, it's gorgeous, I'll buy it. But you don't go in and you don't walk the rooms and you don't look at the size of the shower. You don't look at the kitchen. Is it gas or electric? How big? Is it a double sink? Is it a single sink? Does it have a garbage disposal? Like to look at all of the details of the things that really make this a home. And sometimes we'll judge a whole home by one or two rooms, and we'll say we're going to buy it, or we'll say it's not going to work for us at all. But really, what this kingly attraction work, or what this abundance attraction work, or when we call sex magic, what this tantric work is really calling for us to do is it's actually asking us to get to know our own home so well that when we put the sign out that we are ready for partnership and ownership, that we know exactly what we're putting on the market and its value. Because we only want to attract ideal homeowners who understand the value of every single room and every single thing we've put into this home. So same thing, when we go to purchase an outfit for this divine physical form, we want to know that this is the best choice that I made for what I desire. So you want to know your nooks and crannies of your own body so well. I mean, they'll always tell you that in fashion show. It's not about how much you weigh. It's about how you dress yourself. It's not about your body size or your body shape. It's about how do you dress yourself? How do you carry yourself? How do you feel about yourself in that moment?
Charisma too.
Yeah, so like, the physical attraction, literally it starts to become like not your first thing of attraction, but maybe like something down the line. But instead you're like looking at the foundation of the house. When was it built? Did it get tested for asbestos? Did it have all of the, right? Like all of a sudden you care about what type of, okay, well, what kind of paint has been on these walls? What kind of structural shit has this house gone through? Right? So yeah, we want to just, before we buy and purchase the home, live in it a little bit.
Right. And I think we also have to, more on the subconscious level, is burn the fairy tales, because those are such a terrible model for relationships.
Yes.
And yet that's what's burned into our minds. And even when we use the word king, it kind of brings up, fairy tale type scenarios that can run through your mind.
Oh yeah. And I mean, that's a really, really important point. I think that ultimately, the king that we attract, I mean, and if you look at all of those fairy tales, and this is really important for us to tell, all the little girls and boys out there, is that if you look at all those fairy tales, the moment that the quote unquote woman is able to gain her king is when she actually realizes her worth
Mm-hmm.
and what she's willing to stand up and fight for and what is truly important to her. And a lot of times we, in these stories, I mean, that's what actually pulls our heart at our heartstrings. It's that love story
Mm-hmm.
of the love story with the divine, right? However, we as human beings, some of us are not in that place to really realize that we are divine, that we are God.
Mm-hmm.
We are still looking at we are looking for an external force to confirm
Mm-hmm.
our love, and
Mm-hmm.
we do that in partnership as well, right? Or we do that with our parents, but really ultimately, in the individuation process, ultimately you want to see that you are the ultimate source of all.
Yeah. So that being said, I have a question for you because some of us, I mean, so what I hear you saying is energetically, you are always seeking to find a deeper connection with the divine. And so the more you do that, then the more like you have this mirror, this partner that shows up. I believe that as well. And so, thus, theoretically, we should be okay being single or in partnership or whatever's going around or going on, we should be okay because it's about that relationship with self. But some of us are oriented differently. So,
Yeah.
some of us, like we were just talking about, you are someone who likes to be in partnership and you're usually in partnership and don't spend much time in between. And I'm like, oh, about half or half, but definitely all the way here or all the way here. Um, and everybody's a little bit different. Some people never make it to that committed stage. They just kind of have these more superficial dating relationships. So that being said, uh,
Yeah.
how do you explain those differences? What's your philosophy? And maybe if you want to share your story about your
Sure.
card reading and all of that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I've always kind of, had being raised, I felt bad for always being in partnership. I first time I liked a boy was middle school and like it never stopped.
Mhm,
Like it just never stopped. I always had my eye out and I've always, always been looking for, even when I was in relationship, it wasn't like I stopped my attractions.
mhm,
I I I just then I shifted my attractions to different types of relationships with men,
mhm,
with my friends. Like they never went there, but there was a deep intellectual attraction that was there. But I would never go, there. It was like I would set up these interesting rules for myself of engagement according to society standards.
mhm,
And so my first thing would be that I mean astrologically when until I got an astrological reading I always thought that I was I must just be like a lonely girl who's constantly seeking attention because I always find myself in partnership and it's like not even 6 months goes by before I'm in another serious relationship after ending one. And I mean these are relationships that are years long. I think my shortest relationship is 3.5 years,
yeah,
that I've ever had in this lifetime. And so I always kind of felt like, what's wrong with me? Like, why can't I do the dating thing like all my American friends? And I thought, oh, is it this like Indian culture that has brainwashed me to like,
mhm,
you know, constantly find a husband and not know how to date? I never was really taught how to date. I think my sister and I were probably, and my cousins, we were probably all just figuring it out and trying to navigate it between lying to our parents and living a carefree life. That's not healthy breeding ground for relating
mhm,
if you can't even be honest with your own family.
mhm,
So I think that before we even think about what type of people and lovers we are, you gotta again understand your root,
mhm,
understand understand your framework,
mhm,
this lifetime that you chose. Like the more you get to know yourself first, because a lot of times we are raised to think that everybody should get married and have children.
mhm,
And that is very much this fantasy story that's been sold to us through Disney, through Bollywood, Hollywood, etc.
mhm,
And usually women who don't choose to have children, we can see the avenues how they are portrayed, or what type of businesswoman, like to be a successful businesswoman, you can't bring your children to work, you can't be breastfeeding at work. It's like
mhm,
these different rules that we have set. in a true tantric approach, for you to figure out like what type of king are you ready to attract, it's like you've actually got to be willing to look at the different lenses that are informing your choices first and foremost. Um, Not until I was, I think, how old was I? 38. I got a card reading and I was about to get married, and I kept having these dreams that as right when I was getting married, I had to get up and my body was convulsing and it would just be like vomiting, constant vomiting. And it'd be like my wedding day and like everyone would be there and it would either be the Western portion of the American part of the wedding or the Indian part of the wedding. And it was just like, and here I'm like, or I would have these dreams where I was like trying to plan, but like I couldn't get anybody together and like people weren't showing up. And, friends were telling me like, oh, this is just like pre-wedding jitters and like you're in the process of planning. And I was like, yeah, okay. But like, why do I feel so alone? Like I feel alone in this wedding planning. And like, I would watch movies and it seemed like there were these like families, like all the women in a family would be a part of planning the wedding or girlfriends getting together. And I'm like, why does this feel like it's all me and I'm pushing it? And then I'm dreading it. Like I'd much rather write a thesis.
Wow.
Is really how I felt. I was like, there was one point where I was like, I'd rather write another thesis than get married right now. Like that seems way more manageable for me. And that's when I started to wonder, like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? So I went to my astrologer to get some guidance. And I told my partner for about 6 months at that point, like, I keep having this feeling like I want to break out of my sternum. I would tell him, like, I do, anytime, like, I just sit and take a moment to think, I feel like I just want to break out of my own rib cage. Like, does that make sense to you? And he would tell me, oh, it's because your charter school is going through their renewal, or oh, it's because you just became, you just took this administrative position, or you're managing this, and, this is the family business. And I was like, okay, we'll keep trying, or it's this, or it's that. And like, but that feeling just kept building up in me, and it kept building up in me. And so, he did his strategy to figure out, because I kind of was at a point where I was like, we need to like take some space maybe before we make this big decision. Let's go live our fullest lives before we get married. That makes me feel better. Like we've been together for 10 years. Let's like actually take our last hoorah. And then like really be clear that we want to do this and like no rules. Let's just go for it. Like, let's figure it out. Let's do that. So we tried that for a while.
Wow.
Some of it backfired ridiculously, and some things we didn't completely probably heal from to this day. So in the midst of that, he went and did his kind of own therapeutic approach, and I was like, I'm gonna go to the creek in Boulder. There's this creek that has always spoken to me. I'm just gonna go to that creek and just find this astrologer that I've always gone to and just get clear. I don't know what else to do. I was like, that's what I go to when I'm lost. That's what you go to when you're lost. We're gonna both go our ways. And pretty much she pulled out our astrological charts and she's like, this is great. You guys have like your compatibilities there. And it's true. Like our relationship functioned. We would make money together. We were successful together. We could communicate together. It functioned. But there were certain pieces that were not aligned with my personal evolution. But all the ways we functioned were systemic ways of being raised as an American. So yeah, would my 403B be managed, and would my retirement be handled, and would I like make sure that I could purchase a home and get this loan and that loan and manage my loans and assets and investments? But the other pieces of me, of the reasons why I was born on this planet of personal evolution and this like deeper message that I felt like had to come through, it just felt like it wasn't coming through. And so as she was telling me this, I started getting nauseous right there. And she's starting to talk like, oh no, it's great. And like, you guys are have like a very rational, very linear, logical marriage. And it's pretty awesome. And you'll be successful together. And you'll be able to do the things that that you want to do, like your plan. You'll follow the plan. And I was like, oh my God, this makes me sick. Looked at her and I was like, this makes me sick. She's like, okay. And I was like, I don't know if this is pre-wedding jitters, but it makes me sick. So she said, okay, yes, people do have these pre-wedding jitters, but no one has brought up vomiting and sickness as much as you. So the fact that you're having physical repulsion, and I was like, and it's not him. I don't know what it is. It's not him that's causing the repulsion, but it's this concept or something about this whole setup. And it's so funny. Like now you and I could be like, yeah, duh, Kirti.
Mhm.
Duh, you're like a wild Centrika Devdasi Dakini. Like you want to fucking, you're not someone to be held bound by some rules of love and engagement. But at that time, I was an administrator making over six figures
Mhm.
and was about to marry a military man who was had a very high post, who was getting, you know, was getting promotion after promotion. So it was kind of like it was the right path. It was like this was it. Finally, I was here, right? And so
Mhm.
she was just like, you know what? Let's move the astrology chart to the side. She's like, I don't do this, but I'm just going to pull out my tarot cards. And at that point, I did tarot, but wasn't really even in it deep like that.
Mhm.
And she pulled the tarot cards out, and she had kind of like laid out a story where she pulled me, and it was like the Queen of Cups, and
Mhm.
then she pulled him, and it was like the Knight of Pentacles, and then it was like, then she pulled out the Three of Swords, and then she pulled out the King of Cups, and then it was just like a child, like a boy,
Mhm.
and she was just kind of like, well, the storyline is here. You are the queen. You have a knight, and in order to bring in the king, the knight actually has to be cut, which was the Three of Swords, and and she actually also pulled out the Hangman reversed, and what that really allowed me to see was that my role was actually my role in this marriage because of my power
Mhm.
and my queen like energy was actually holding back his knight like aspirations
Mm.
and the ways in which he needed to be present in this world in his lifetime, that I was actually holding back his abundance.
Mhm.
And that spoke to me because I did feel that way with him. I
Mhm.
felt like, my spiritual stuff, like he would get it and then he'd hold himself back. But we were at different levels. We were in different spaces of understanding. And so he would hold back what he really wanted to do for the sake of what I said, or I would hold back myself. And the spiritual evolution, we couldn't allow that for one another. And so when she told me that, she let me know, like, if you could do this with grace, she said that your lesson is your soul contracts with men start to you're opening up grace now, because they have been like butcher knives up
Mhm.
until this point,
Mhm.
like boom, like I help them, we get there, and then it has to be a butcher knife to send them off because there's no other way. And
Wow.
so she said this was like my opportunity to really finish and complete soul contracts with men that I've been apparently collecting for lifetimes because of the type of work that I've done, probably physically, spiritually, and emotionally with men, that I've just collected. She was like, "This is what you're really here to do." And so I took her advice. I actually did do it with grace. I didn't take a butcher knife to the relationship, and this was probably a relationship that I could have, and I would have felt justified. A lot of people around me said to do that, but I actually wanted to do something different, and I was ready for my own personal evolution.
Mhm.
So I did it with grace, and before I knew it, my current partner entered in, and within our first week, I sent my birth times and his birth times, and surprisingly, he was the first guy where I said, "I'm going to ask you something. I kind of want to share your birth time with my astrologer. If it's weird to you," and he was like, "I didn't know it. I was waiting for you to ask," and I was like, "Wow, I've never had that experience before." He's like giving me his birth time, and I met his mother within like the second week of our relating, and it was just like the pace at which we progressed was like, yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Like
Mhm.
this type of level of emotional connection and expansion, and I finally felt king, a match for
Level.
my cups.
Yeah. Your
I
cup.
got it. The abundance that I had, I felt my king, my match.
Yeah.
And when I texted her, I let her know, I said, wow, I get it. Like, I'm my own king. And I even told her I had a dream. I had a dream where I put a crown. I looked in the mirror and I crowned myself king. And I was this masculine version of myself. And she
Mhm.
said, that's great. Keep working on that. And yet and there's a man coming to your house, so get your apartment ready. Like, it's not, you don't get to just be solo. And I actually said, can I do ritual to be solo? I'd like to cut the cords between me and men. I'm ready to go on an individual pilgrimage. Like, I want to be the oracle in the hood. I'm ready for that. There's a part of me that wants that solitude now, that independent
Mm.
freedom. I've been with men for the last 20 years of my life. Like,
Mm.
I'm willing to try that and explore and have fun. And she said, no, that's your juxtaposition. That's what you're always going to deal with in this lifetime. But no, you will. He's on his way. And
Wow.
so I kind of set up my apartment with my subconscious knowing that. So I did a couple of, witchy things. And it was like subconscious witchy things that people would pick up on when they'd come over. They'd be like, wow, everything is in like doubles in your apartment.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything is in twos. And I was like, oh, shoot, I didn't notice that. So, it just started to happen where I was calling it in and I was calling it in. And sometimes it's not a conscious awareness, but really what you're calling in is your own integration of your own masculine.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew I didn't want to call in the king of the same ilk that I had been attracting,
Mm-hmm.
which was that, the man I'm supposed to marry, and
Mm-hmm.
mixing that with the man who turns me on, mixing that with my spiritual, turn ons, and trying to make it all one. And it was like, no, 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 no. Like, what am I as one? And I
Mm-hmm.
just want to attract somebody who gets this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Be good,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
You're fully seen because they have similar matches. They're similarly aligned, bringing that same level of power as well. Which to me, that's kind of like, the spiritual power couple is what I call it. Because a power couple, you think of like two business executives or two breadwinners or something like that, but it's really about how evolved are you on your path? Have you been doing your work? Are you gonna, you know, walk into the fire, or is it gonna scare you, kind of thing?
Yeah, and you got to be willing to walk into the fire with yourself. Like,
Mm.
get really clear what you're attracting. If it's really a yoni, a primal yoni choice,
Yeah,
that's okay.
yeah.
Accept that about, like, wow, I'm not really looking for partnership. I just really want to I'm actually just want some needs met right now. But you have to be in a place, if that's the type of attraction, that you got to know the next day, like, that's all that it was. And we have to do that work. Then our feminine energy in healing, we have to heal we can't look to an external partner than to heal your feminine attachments after you make love,
Hmm.
because there are those attachments, especially if you have a very porous energetic body. You are going to
Hmm.
soak in every love affair that you intermingle with. You're going to
Right.
soak in and absorb something.
Hmm.
So you want to get really clear about what level. And so that's why, we use the chakras, in this very neo-tantric view. We use these chakras with very psychosomatic mantras of like release and heal, to like help us understand that these energetic centers within our body, you know, their connection to nature allows and informs our emotional capabilities. But that's why you want to know, through all these energetic centers of yourself, all these archetypes of your being,
Hmm.
there's always, it truly is what Shakespeare says. It is a stage. And you got to know, who are the roles, who are the main players
Hmm.
on stage, and what kind of attention are they seeking.
Hmm.
And there's a way to give them that attention, and then say, okay, and now what do you really need? What are you really asking for?
Hmm. Totally.
Oh, sorry about that.
That is our commercial break. No. Um, yeah, totally. So, but I feel like we should define, maybe for some folks, what we mean by king and knight and joker.
Let's do that.
Because, yeah, and it's not derogatory in any way by looking at it like a hierarchy, but more so what you said earlier, kind of the roles. Like, I see it's almost like developmental levels, right?
Yeah.
Um, More so than a hierarchy, and you evolve to that next level, but you're integrating that fun playfulness, which a joker might be. The guys that come, they make us laugh, they're hilarious, we have a great time with them, but then they're not consistently showing up because they're just wherever the energy is, right? And then the knights, my perception of knights are the men that love to serve. So they love to protect the woman and show up with the great thing to say, or like throw out the blanket when she's cold, or all of those things. But they're also so chivalrous to every woman. And so their attentions are scattered. And a queen, if you're, like you said, if you've aspired to that level and it's a true queen, she's not going to be okay with that, right? Because she's
Right.
like, I'm doing my shit, I'm doing my queen shit right here. Like, I need you to be doing that too. And so some men are simply, they're beautiful men, and they can be very healing, I think, as friends in their night energy. And also I've had this where I've been out with another goddess and her king, and he offers some of his night energy to me while we're out. Like, he'll walk me to my car if
Right.
it's dark, or pay for a drink, or things like that when we're all out together, which was very healing to me. And it goes back to what you're saying about that healthy masculine energy, but and surrounding ourselves and saturating in it from our friend group, as well as our internal work and
Yeah.
integration within ourselves. But then yeah, the king being like, I've done my work, I know what I want, it's you, and kind of like knowing it when he sees it, right? That's the thing. Same with the queen, like knowing it when she sees it and knowing to just go with it. And I know you had that reading, but your current relationship happened pretty quickly. It
Oh
just,
yeah.
from the way that you explain it, and then there's so many similarities in my current partnership as well. But a lot of those similar points, and even to the point where I hadn't even thought about it, but a year ago, or maybe not quite that long ago, I was, just before COVID happened, I was doing a lot of decluttering, energetically and physically, just purging, getting stuff out of my home. And I decided that after getting rid of 8 bags of clothes, that I was going to clear out one of my closets, because I have two, and make it available and empty for a partner, like symbolically, metaphorically, and that I would keep some of my stuff in there just so my clothes could breathe, but it was going to be able to be moved in about 3 minutes. So that was the energetic creating space.
Mm,
And
I
then
love
also having the nightstand on the other side of the bed that I kept
that.
completely empty. And it it wasn't that I felt like I needed a partner. There was more so, I knew eventually that's where my interest lied. And if the right partner showed up, then it's an easy it's an easy fit. And I hadn't really thought about that until you were just saying
Yeah.
you also had the pairs and things like this. And then, of course, when my partner moved in, it was just like, it literally took probably less than 3 minutes for me to clear
Right.
out that closet. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, that kind of is the way. I mean, there's not really the way it should be or it shouldn't be, but it should feel like flow.
Hmm.
It should just feel like when water enters, a creek and it flows. It's just like it goes up and over the rocks. It like finds its way and nothing is really a disturbance. And if it's a disturbance, the water can like move around it and flow through it. And so I think a big question for a lot of women to ask themselves, and of course we're speaking very in hetero terms here,
Yeah. Right.
those of you who are looking for, you really want it like we need to move away from the traditional meaning of king and know that king is actually your equal and opposite. So,
Hmm.
whatever you are in this moment, know that whatever your charge is, and this is non hetero, but whatever your charge is, so getting really clear with, what are representations of the masculine energy and representations of the feminine energy, getting clear with your current charge, and just know you are always going to be attracting the equal and opposite of that. There's
Hmm.
no thought, there's really no hard work. So if you're like, wow, I want to be taken care of, instead of going like, I need to go find a man who's going to take care of me, so let me wear a skin tight dress, wear my push-up bra, and wear my thong and shave my legs and do all the fake shit so that I can portray myself as something so that somebody's going to be attracted to the fake version of me.
Hmm.
Right? You know what I'm saying? And I'm going to do all of these things because I want to feel taken care of. When the truth is, it's like, well, actually, wind it back. As soon as you feel like, oh, wow, like I really want to feel taken care of, go first ask yourself is like, well, am I taking care of myself? Like, how am I taking care of myself? Now, if you want to get dressed up and wear that dress and wear that push-up bra and wear that thong, and you could sit at home and feel sexy, do it.
Mm-hmm.
Do it. And you don't need anyone's approval of you. And you don't need to take a selfie.
Mm-hmm.
But you can just be sexy at home. That's starting to give yourself value. So everything, a basic practice when we feel very turned off by the partners that we're attracting in our life, or we are like, what the fuck is going on? Why am I attracting this? Like, I have definitely had those moments. Like, I have attracted a lot of very psychotic behavior, and I'm like, what is it in me that is like, if you're crazy, I'm open and available. If you're, if you're a creep and you don't know boundaries, come talk to me.
I'll teach them to you. Yeah.
Yeah, like when as I was doing the work, it was like more and more would come in, and like this has been a pattern of mine since high school.
Mm.
And I'd never been able. I'd always just be like, wow, why in clubs do I always get the aggressive guys that don't know how to take no for an answer, that are going to follow me to my car when I'll be with my girlfriends, and like they don't have that issue. Like men just respect them right away. And I always thought, oh, I must act cheap, or I must be, am I acting like I want that and I deserve that? So then I would totally change. I became such a butchy girl, like just would dress like a dude all the time, when I go out, like be afraid of dressing too tight and doing all of these things and wanting to express that side of myself. Right. So it's really important that we get very, very clear with knowing that your vibe is ultimately what is attracting that. So I know the reason why now I can look back and own that, yes, I was attracting very psychotic behavior because I was that desperate for attention. I really was. I was that desperate for attention, and I felt that low that it was like, well, that was an easy place to get attention. They want to give you attention so bad, they're literally would die to give you attention, some of them. And some of them would even kill you if you didn't have their attention. That's how fucking desperate I had to like get into the crevices of my brain and be like, whoa, damn. And I'm like willing to share my body with men like that and have them run my life and tell me how to dress and how to act and how to be just for their attention. Like, there's got to be other men out there. And I would see my friends. I have like, a couple of friends. And then I also would see in my circle of friends, why are all the girls I'm with attracting the same kind of men? Because I'm attracting the same kind of girlfriends. So when I started to do the work and started to talk to my girlfriends about what I was doing, those who wanted to travel with me and up level with me stayed, and those who didn't. And I actually had to attract my king. I had to be willing to let go of certain relationships and friendships that were not allowing me to evolve. So that's the other piece. It's like, if you are somebody that's looking to attract your most optimal mate, look at who you're hanging out with. Because that circle of friends is also a reflection of the type of work and energy you're putting out there. Right?
Totally. Yeah. Makes sense. So, and then one thing we talked about too is once your king comes in, then that's a whole other level that you kind of wish you were back there wondering if he was going to show up sometimes.
You're like, oh my God, like I actually like have to be in this job relation. Like it's like all of a sudden we have to communicate and we actually have to like show up. Like this isn't just like the fun stuff, this fun connecting. It's like, yeah, it's all that. And now you have to get to know the foundation of your home. You've got to find those leaks that did not show up. in those first couple of months of living there.
Mhm.
You got to find the potholes. You got to find the little gopher spots.
Mhm.
You know, you when you go to plant your garden, you got to check. Now you're going to check the soil and see how right you. There's no way you can check it all out before you buy it. But you look for the big stuff, right? You look for the big things before you buy the home.
Mhm.
So yeah, once you and it's just this is like what I tell people about a Kundalini awakening is that like once it happens, you don't get to choose the packaging.
No.
You just don't. Like, okay, you had you were in an orgasmic state for 3. You didn't get to control that. It just happens, and
Mhm.
it's like you got to deal with it. Same thing.
Mhm.
Once you say yes to the kingship, and you really tell divine, and divine sees that you really are ready to bring in a king, yet you really are ready for a king.
Mhm.
You don't get to decide the package that he arrives in. You
Mhm.
get to decide, is this a home
Mhm.
that your home can merge with,
Mhm.
and you guys actually create like a magical new home together.
Yeah, something bigger than yourselves. Yeah, absolutely. That's that synergy, it's that expansion. That's creation energy, which is Kundalini energy. So it totally makes sense from a very spiritual to a physical level. And yeah, I mean, it's like people, even if you talk to your friends and they're in this relationship that looks really powerful or whatever, there's that level of intimacy and that level of excitement, that level of passion that other people can envy. But that you don't think about, and maybe we don't even think about as we're calling in that more conscious
Right.
relationship, is all the maintenance work that needs to be done to keep it at that level. So of course there's going to be those moments, but then how do you handle those swings of when it's not there? Because if your relationship can go to passion level here, that means it can dip back down
Oh,
again.
oh yeah.
And it can transmute and transform, and this can be like laughter, and then all of a sudden like roar, this kind of thing. It can go all of those ways, because why? Because there's such an accurate mirror for you,
Yeah.
and we just bounce around to people, and we use them as the reflection we want to see. But when you have somebody, like you said, that's fully sees you, you can't even twist or turn or change the angles in the mirror. You just are confronted with what's right there. And
Yeah.
so we think we're reacting to them, but we're just reacting to our own reflection in those deep, deep places that get the chance to evolve and expand and grow. But I mean, it shouldn't have to be work as like hard work either. I mean, there should be more alignment and flow, right?
Right.
Than struggle. So I
Well,
think
and then that's perspective too, right? So that's perspective too. I mean, the yelling and the shouting, or the yelling and triggered space, can feel very orgasmic with the proper container, or with the proper, setup of letting your partner know. It's like if you're having sex and you communicate like, "Oh my gosh, baby, I'm about to come."
mm-hmm,
Right? Your partner can get ready, or you can get ready for your partner if they're communicating that to you. Or even like, ooh, I'm at that point of squirting. Your partner can engage and knows where you're at. Like, even in lovemaking, we communicate.
mm-hmm,
Communicating in lovemaking heightens our sensual presence,
mm-hmm,
right? Until the point where we become so energetically involved, words aren't even necessary. But oftentimes, words are the gateway drug to energetic communication, and that's because we're human beings with, very, very intricately designed brains,
mm-hmm.
and we have this whole heart math and heart and head connection that's happening. So, yeah, like that, those arguments, I mean, there's a reason why people have amazing makeup sex.
Mm-hmm.
It ultimately is quite orgasmic to get your feelings out
Yeah.
however they want to come out. It
Mm-hmm.
is orgasmic to do that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a way, however, we can allow our partners to be orgasmic and to get their healing, where we, as the ones who are witnessing, don't have to take it personally and don't have to feel shitty while
Mm-hmm.
they do their work.
Mm-hmm.
We can really actually make this a sacred initiation of evolution.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, all it really takes is like, a common agreement with each other, and letting each other know like you're about to go into that wounded animal space.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, I mean, we could go on and on about the different pieces of that too. There's so much to talk about. But
Yes.
what I'm curious, and maybe we'll wrap it up after this question because we're approaching
Hmm.
8 o'clock now. But you told me in Tulum when we were in Tulum that you saw that my king was coming soon, and I wasn't so sure about that because I didn't seem to have a lot of, kings banging down my door during COVID. And it was a little bit, harder to even be or near people to meet people or whatnot. And I wasn't exactly looking, opened up space, but not looking.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious because there's some goddesses out there watching that are wondering what you saw in me that made you think that, or what you saw
Mm.
going on that made you think that that king was coming soon. Because now I'm starting to recognize it in other goddesses and I can feel
Mm.
into it. And so what let's define that. What would those signs be in your opinion?
Well, one, I saw that you were doing the work,
Mm,
right? Like you were doing the communication work. The first night we landed, you
mm,
cried and
mm,
were willing to talk about your emotions,
mhm,
and were willing to be vulnerable and intimate.
mm,
Huge sign.
mhm,
Somebody who's willing to be vulnerable and intimate with what they're doing and navigating and be willing to ask for support.
mhm,
These are signs that the feminine is alive
mm,
and that
mhm,
the feminine is ready to be taken care of and is asking in a very conscious and wise way, not like, all right, I need support, I'm getting naked, just touch my body and let me know I'm loved. That's okay. We know that but that would not be like tuning into like, do you know every person and their intentions and like, but really it was just like, this is what I'm going through. This is what I need to feel loved and supported. And this is what I would like to ask of you all.
mhm,
And you were very clear in your requests how it would support what you were healing
mm,
in terms of your feminine.
mhm,
And so that was one thing, is that you're doing the work.
mhm,
You're a walking example of doing the work
mm,
always.
mhm,
And we hadn't hung out so much before Tulum. I think we went on like maybe 2 hikes and my birthday weekend, which was like, we kind of like got to unfold there. So um, seeing that, and then also just seeing your willingness to share
mm,
about what was going on with the suitors.
mhm,
So most of the time, women who are, and I'm being very, hetero about this, but if a woman's talking about a man and women are coming to me, oftentimes when women are really ready and able to be so brutally honest about
mhm.
what's going on, they're like, I'm really fucking ready to complete this pattern, yo. It's like the nose is like meets the grindstone, right? Rubber meets the road. It's like, oh, it's done. Like it's like that moment where the addict is like, fucking, I'm ready. Just
Mhm.
take me to the center. Sign me up to deal with this shit. Like I'm ready to sober up. Like I can't fucking do it anymore.
Yeah.
Like this pattern is done.
Mhm,
And I saw that happening with you, navigating the overlapping of suitors and the
mhm,
types of suitors, and and me feeling like there was a deeper love attraction and encouraging you to like speak that out, be honest with your love attractions, and you would do it.
mhm.
And that was it. Like you were doing it. You put yourself out
Oh, that's
there.
right, that's
And
right.
then you'd
Yep.
see like, oh, this suitor's not a match. And
Mhm,
you were willing to be like, yeah, man, just not a match. I'm ready. You never stopped.
mhm,
So you were ruthless. You were ruthless. So it's kind of like a mother for her child. It's like you want to make something fucking happen. You were willing to make it happen. So
mhm,
like, and this is the piece about the divine feminine, is that we are so powerful that when we plant that seed, it
mhm,
starts to grow. Now, the ultimate thing, though, would make me say that to you that night, like, well, get ready. Are you actually really ready for your king?
mhm,
Is, because I saw your role in our group, and even with the men in our group, I
mhm,
could see your role in the sense that you were so ready to be supported. You were
mhm,
so ready with the different men in our group and your connection with the men and the male energy in our group. It was clear, like, oh, wow, so ready. Like the type of partnership that you had developed with the men in our group was
Mhm.
like an amazing queen like relationship. And
Mhm.
so again, the way you're seeing it with other women, I was like, oh shit, I
Mhm.
totally could resonate with your feeling. And I was like, oh, we are here.
Mhm.
And we even had a moment where I was like, yo, I got to process this with you. It's like, it's like I'm seeing this and let's talk about it. And it
Mhm.
was like this awesome conversation that you and I were able to speak on, like what you were looking for, where your attractions are at, what you're managing. And you were
Mhm.
it was very clear that you knew like, well, this is my kind of like my womb choice thing going on right now. This
Mhm.
doesn't carry what I want. This kind of carry. I mean, it's like when you're looking for a home or a job.
Mhm.
You weren't like emotionally swaying this way or that way, but it was more like very clear on who was housed where.
Mhm.
So then when we did ritual, that powerful day at the cenote,
Mhm.
and I saw that you took, two really powerful elements and put them together for
Mhm.
your offering to
Mhm.
Mama Gaia or to the land that we were on. And,
Mhm.
you took this powerful form of your sensual DNA and you
Mhm.
took this powerful form of your ancestral DNA
Mhm.
and you put them together.
Mhm.
And you did that with no cue. Nobody said,
Mhm.
okay, well, this is how you. So when I saw that you naturally did that,
Mhm.
my my medicine woman was like, oh, okay, yeah, she's ready. Because you put together your sensuality with your ancestry. That
Mhm.
is what
Mhm.
that's the type of king you're looking for, is somebody who can help heal your ancestral wounds
Yeah, makes sense.
through sensuality. And
Mhm.
so that's kind of why I was like, okay, well, if you're ready for that king, the king is coming. It's about to come in, and this is you. Are you ready for that?
Mhm.
And I've had this conversation with other sisters, and I ask, like, are you really ready for that king energy? Are you ready to not hook up with multiple lovers? Are
Mhm.
you ready to not be liked by all 10 men in the room,
Mhm.
but to be loved and adored by your, mate?
Mhm.
And are you ready to, shift your channels and shift your beam so that your king knows that you are all about them and they are all about you? Because
Mhm.
that, for attractive, powerful women, is a step,
Yeah.
especially since we've been raised to navigate life as a feminist, not as a feminine, but as a feminist who has to fucking fight using our attraction to get what we want. So
Yeah.
it takes us a lot of work
Mhm.
to heal our own wounded masculine, which is
Mhm.
that feminist part of us, and really begin to heal it into a feminine energy
Mhm.
of abundance. So that's why I knew that with you. I just, it was like, for me, the way things happen is events occur, and then at some point, somehow, they each become like places on a map, and then like lines start to connect, like webs,
Mhm.
and then something comes out, and it's like, oh, and I just said it, and then I was like, well, I said it, let's make it right. It's like, oops, I said it, I don't know.
Universe is aligning. Okay. That's the
Then
goal.
when you were like, I don't know about that, there was a moment where I was like, oh shit, what the fuck, Kirti? I'm practicing, like, fuck, practice, ask someone if they want to hear what you have to say before you just blurt shit out. And
Mhm.
it was also a practice of like, I said what I felt to a sister I love. And I think I'm speaking what's truly on her heart. And that might be a part of my gift. So why not?
Yeah, and I always appreciate the way that you communicate and the things that you share and the deep level of things that you share so bravely and so gracefully. So absolutely, and I'm so glad that you did say that. But I think part of my disbelief also was that my astrologer had told me over a year ago that I would be with a partner at this time. She said this time next year, which was at the time like October, December, right around the time I first met you in person, actually.
Yeah.
And then I did start dating somebody, so I thought, oh, maybe she got the years confused or something, but it was very short lived. And then I spent most of the year alone, very
Wow.
much alone, most of the year. So it was the clearing out, and I was doing that intentionally, not reactively, but more so like I need to focus on my business. Like there's a pandemic going on, like,
Yeah.
stepping into my healthy masculine and in a
Yeah.
crisis and whatnot. But yeah, I was feeling that, she might have been mistaken about the time because she said about mid-December and we were in Tulum at the end of November. And
Yeah.
like, I just can't see being in a relationship 3 weeks from now. But that was
Lo
part
and
of it.
behold.
Lo and behold, and to know that the person was actually supposed to be there with us in Tulum. So knowing that his trip got canceled, actually gave me that last little bit of healing, transforming, and are you ready yet? It's really interesting to see how that works out, because if he had been there, things may have been, the dynamic may have been different. Things I wouldn't, maybe wouldn't have done
Oh yeah. It would
this.
have been very different. Who knows? You
Yeah,
know.
the same healing. So it's interesting when we look at what we can do consciously to prepare, and then also just surrendering and leaning back into
Mm.
moving through us, right? Or that alignment.
Yeah, and I think like I love what you said, like the surrendering piece, because that's been a big theme too. It's just like surrendering and letting go. A lot of times people are like, okay, it's out of my hands. It's like, no, I'm learning like that's not surrendering and letting go. Actually, it's realizing that like everything is in your hands to say what you feel and to be in alignment with who you are. And once you put it out there, once you express it and you recast a spell through your written and verbal language, really hopefully verbal language where other can be a witness to what you're saying and creating.
Mhm.
Once you've done that, then you let it go. Then you let it go. And that's letting go is actually an honoring
Mm,
of who you truly are. It's not letting go of what you really want. No. Letting go, it's letting go of how your truth arrives, how
mhm,
what you're creating comes in. You're letting go of how it arrives. But you are
mhm,
never letting go of your purpose and your evolution.
mhm. Or your intuitive downloads too,
Yeah.
because there's something to that. A lot of times, you are tapping into that mission or whatever it is that, hopefully was programmed into us before we came down. Some of us try to stay on path, some of us get lost, but like getting back onto path. And yeah, it's and I see a lot of really powerful relationships happening around me. Are you seeing the same? I've really seen it the last 2 years, in fact, not
Yeah.
even just right now, but it just seems like couples have been shifting for a while, a few years now, real fast, and these powerful alignments happening.
Well, yeah, and I think that the blessing of this whole pandemic was really around people going within, right? Really going within and seeing what is important to them, and really understanding the structures and frameworks of their personal relationships with their family members, with their friends, with even their workspaces, and really seeing what their value is, where their value, like what they're valued at in society
Mhm,
based on the pandemic. And then it was also like, what's your value, what's your own inner value.
mhm,
And if there's a big discrepancy, a lot of people felt that.
mhm,
So I think that if those who were ready and willing to step in and make those shifts and changes, I am sure that a lot of people out there who are entering strong relationships, they are feeling the benefit of releasing old thoughts, habits, and relationships that
mhm,
were not understanding their true value.
mhm. Yeah, that's some Uranus and Taurus shit right there.
Totally.
That's
And I
very.
mean, the fact that we saw it come through, in the way that they even, talked about it, where it was, something to have to do with health and immunity,
Mhm,
right? So that can be such a threat, right, to somebody's life. But
mhm,
really, life is, what Shofar says it so beautifully, living in full expression. Like,
mhm,
that we forget that you have your health, your physical health, You also have your emotional health, you have your financial health,
Mhm.
you have your romantic health.
Mhm.
These are all parts of the house that have to be tended to.
Mhm.
And sometimes the majority of us spend time in our living room with the television or in our office.
Mm.
And we're not spending time, unless we have to, in the bathroom
Mhm.
to take and release shit.
Mhm.
Or we're not spending time in our backyard on the patio with nature. Or we're not spending time in the master bedroom
Mhm. Mhm.
alone. So let's never spend master time in the master bedroom alone and
Mhm.
really get to know what does it feel like to like pleasure and love ourselves.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's deep. Everything is we have to go. This is the dualistic approach of life: is external, internal,
Mhm.
external, internal, right? So I think we probably see that playing out everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I was just thinking about how complementary the work is that you and I do too, because you are so much dealing with the body, not only through movement and music, but also the sensual emotional exchange and some of the energy work that's happening there. And I just, like I said earlier, I just watched Shofar's video with some of his mentors, and it was amazing. Really appreciated that on YouTube. But yeah, just understanding the the intensity, and where we're going from that.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
it. I really think that that's it, and knowing that, knowing and remembering that ultimately, like, we are here to enjoy
Mhm.
life.
Mhm. Mhm.
Life
Absolutely.
is ultimately here for us
Mhm.
to enjoy.
Beautiful. And Nikita is shouting out. She's saying, "Loving the Trinity alignment of this conversation. Appreciate you, sisters." So we
Oh,
share that with you too. But yeah, like I was saying earlier, you're working a lot with the body and the energy work. I'm working a lot with the mind and the emotions.
mhm.
And I know that there's a lot of goddesses out here who are wanting to do the internal work. They're wanting to find partnership, and they're willing to do the internal work to find partnership. And I know I'm offering a mind body skills group 12 weeks to go through some of those shadows, those triggers, but
Beautiful.
it out in a pleasurable way. And I'm not talking about sensuality or sexuality, but I'm talking about mindfulness, right? Which
Yeah.
is sensuality, because when you're mindful of all of the senses, your body is in a state of pleasure, whether that
Mm,
be, however you want to define that. But we're using meditation and guided imagery and all of these relaxing things to the nervous system to allow those traumas to release. And I know that you're doing it through literal like shaking and movement, and then also the energy work. So it's like hitting it from both sides. And your work is very specific to couples. You've been doing a lot of work specifically with couples, and I tend to work more with the individual, whether they're pre-relationship or in a different relationship, um, to um, prepare for that relationship, or make it prepare for that next level of the relationship if they're already in one.
yeah.
So wanted to let the folks watching know about that as options if they wanted to work. And then can you share your website with them?
Yeah, sure. You can find me at dilseculture.com. That's Dilse culture.com. And Dilse means from the heart. So
Mhm.
everything I offer there is heart-based culture. And yeah, you can see everything that I'm doing and what I'm up to, and chat with me. You can book a discovery call, and we can see what's alive for you. And if I'm not the optimal, I can guarantee you that I could find somebody who I feel would be an optimal match for you.
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely. And my website, you probably already know because you're here, natashaedwina.com. And I also have information about the Mind Body Skills groups under Mind Body Skills on my website. So thank you everyone for joining. And Steffi's saying hello and sending everyone here a whole lot of love. Oh, thank you, Steffi. I've been a little bit spacey and out of it today. I have a massive headache I woke up with that is like muscle tension. So I'm using all my energies to be here right now and be present. But I didn't want to cancel this one because it's such a powerful topic. And I knew that a lot of people were looking forward to it. So I'm sure we can revisit it again. And if we didn't cover something and you have a question, then put it in the comments or DM me on Instagram, or you can email Kirti on her website. So that we can tailor the part 2 or the part 3 or the part 4 to what you're really curious about. So thank you, Kirti. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I am going to rest now and have a beautiful, beautiful week as Venus moves into Pisces. Love and
Ooh.
on Wednesday. So I'm excited about that. All right. Good night.
Good night, everybody.